Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am back again with another video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Saturn in the first house. Excuse my eyebrows, I know they're usually always looking real nice, but quarantine life, nothing's open, so can't get them done. So you guys just have to bear with me and look at my scraggly eyebrows. Before I get into, Saturn as a natal placement, I wanted to briefly break down the Saturn energy as well as the first house energy for those of you who are new to astrology. So, Saturn represents limitations, restrictions, discipline. It also represents your karma, depending on what sign your Saturn is in. It also represents protection. Saturn isn't energy that just takes things away from you, even though it can do that. Depending on how your chart is set up, Saturn in the first house might not be that bad for somebody. Like, say if somebody has like a lot of water in their chart and they're super receptive and really easily affected by other people's energy, Saturn in the first house isn't such a bad thing. I feel like Saturn is essentially protecting somebody in that case. So it really just depends on how your chart looks. But I digress. Saturn is also a tough love energy as well. You know, Saturn brings lessons into your life not to make you suffer and not to make you feel like, oh, the universe is like conspiring against me. No, Saturn wants to see you win, but it also wants you to put in the work to get what it is that you're trying to be successful in. I'm going to talk about the first house. The first house is the house of self. It's ruled by Aries. And the first house is your early childhood and your childhood development. So, depending on the sign your first house is in, those are the life lessons that you had to encounter in your early childhood in order to develop into the person you are now and the person that you're going to be in the future. The first house is your image. It's how you dress yourself up. It's your personality. It's how people see you and how you interject yourself into the world around you. So when Saturn is in your first house, this is how I see it. So every house has rules, right? So when you think of like a household, everybody has like their own specific rules and guidelines that they go by in their house. The same thing applies to all the 12 houses in the zodiac. Every house has essentially their own specific energies and what they do in that house. When somebody has Saturn in the first house, essentially they were going against the rules of that house in their past life. And Saturn is your karma, and Saturn has to do with rules, regulations, and following those rules. And if you go against the rules, you'll get your karma essentially by Saturn. You'll suffer the consequences. They went against the rules of the house of Aries. So the house of Aries, it's all about self-expression and expressing yourself in a very courageous kind of way, not holding back how you feel, what you're thinking, what you're doing, and being spontaneous and being strong, being independent. So when Saturn is there, you're like put on timeout, essentially. You're getting punished because in your past life you probably weren't doing XYZ that I explained about Aries being in the first house. Or you probably abused it. So it could go either way. You probably overdid it, or you probably didn't do enough of that Aries kind of energy through whatever sign that is in your first house. Saturn is essentially here to discipline you in this area so you could get it together, because that's what Saturn wants to do. It wants you to get it all the way together. Saturn is gonna give you a little bit of tough love here because you didn't follow the rules, basically. Saturn is helping you develop as a person in little small steps. And it's doing it in a very tough love kind of way because remember, Saturn wants to see you win. And like they say about Saturn, it'll give you your rewards in due time. So I'll use myself as an example. I have an Aquarius ascendant and my Saturn is in Pisces in the first house. So most likely in my past life, I probably sacrificed my individuality for other people because opposite of the first house is the seventh house, which is the house of relationships and other people. Pisces is the sign of sacrifice and sacrifice for the collective. It could be an energy of guilt as well. Pisces is a very giving sign and it really loves people and it really wants to make everybody feel good and be happy. So sometimes Pisces, it'll sacrifice itself for the greater good of everybody else. And with Saturn and Pisces being my first house, it's teaching me how to detach a little bit and to stand tall in my individuality and not sacrifice myself for people. But it's also teaching me balance, that I still need to interact with people. I still need to connect and make bonds with people, but not to the detriment of my own identity and who I am, though. So Saturn wants me to balance my individuality, my independence, my uniqueness, while still being able to make relationships with other people and know how to put those boundaries to where it's not going too far, to where it's like I lack a sense of self and I don't even know who I am. In this life that I'm in now, I had to endure a lot of energies, people, places, and things, mostly people, since again the first house is opposite from the seventh house. People who would try to make me feel guilty about, standing on my own 2 feet, being my own individual, going to the beat of my own drum. And, those people would attack me and who I am and try to, take my sense of individuality away from me. And that is the lesson of Saturn, is to not let people take away your individuality. That's what makes you you. That's what makes you unique. Especially because I'm an Aquarius ascendant. So in this life, I'm meant to be a very quirky, unique kind of person, and there's going to be a lot of people that manifest through that Saturn energy that try to make me feel bad about being a rebel, being unique, being, innovative in my image and things like that. All those Aquarian things, people are going to make me feel like, or try to make me feel like I'm doing something bad. And that is what Saturn is trying to show you, is that you're not a bad person for wanting to be your own individual. But that's how the energy will manifest. Because remember what I said when my square, well, not my square video, I didn't make a video on squares, but in my Mercury square Mars video, I said that because of the square aspect, it's going to manifest through people that get on your nerves or who want to challenge you, yada, yada, yada. Go watch my Mercury square Mars video and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the same thing for Saturn in the first house. You're going to manifest people, places, and things that challenge you and that are really going to give you a tough time. And Saturn is challenging you to work past those things. Saturn in the first house will bring you rewards over time because Saturn rules time. It's going to require a lot of patience dealing with this kind of energy because you're going to hit a lot of roadblocks a lot of times before you reach that success in this kind of placement. Depending on how fast you grasp the lesson, Saturn will ease up. That's why it's important to know your chart early, before your 30s. So when your Saturn return comes, you're not stumbling and falling. You already got this. You know, you've mastered it and you get it. So Saturn's lessons won't be as bad. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm grateful that I got into astrology so early, before my 30s. I'm in my late 20s. And, you know, I'm understanding my Saturn because I don't want to have a hard time during my Saturn return. Let's talk about what I was saying in the beginning about how Saturn represents protection. It's protection energy. How I see having Saturn in the first house, at least how I see it now, because when I first got into my chart and I seen that I had Saturn in the first house, and I learned a little bit about Saturn, and I even looked up things on the internet. Do not trust what you read on the internet. Some of it can be right, but some of it will just scare people and make people feel bad about their charts. And that's why it's important that, yes, you read things, you could do your research, but, you know, introspect on it. Introspect on what it means for you personally, so you could get a different perspective on whatever kind of difficult placement that you have, or any placement. It doesn't have to be a difficult one. It could be a good placement. Good. I don't think any placement is good or bad. It just is what it is. And, you know, it's about mastering and continuing to transform those energies that you have in your chart, whether they're quote unquote good or bad energies. How I see Saturn in the first house now is, I just see Saturn is protecting me, or anybody that has Saturn in the first house. Saturn is protecting you from outside influences that are trying to infiltrate on your energy and drain your energy. Especially if you're a water dominant person, Saturn is definitely trying to protect you, because Saturn knows that you're empathetic, you're intuitive, you're very receptive. Water energy is very receptive and susceptible to energy vampires. With having a lot of water energy, that means that you're a very spiritual person. And just because you don't have a lot of water energy, that doesn't mean you're not a spiritual person. But water is represented by the moon energy, and the moon energy is very receptive, very spiritual, very energetically in tune, is what I'm trying to say. We're all spiritual beings. No matter if you have a lot of water in your chart or not, you're still just as spiritual. So I feel like Saturn in the first house, you're very special. You're a very special person. You're a person that needs to be protected at all costs. And that's how I see Saturn. I see that Saturn is not allowing certain people in your energy force field because they don't deserve to be there. And that's what Saturn is trying to help you realize, that you are a special person. Even though at the same time, Saturn will make you feel like you're not valued, you're not special. It'll make you feel like, you know, you're not worth anything and there's nothing great about you. And that's not true. You're a very special person. And Saturn is giving you these harsh lessons to help you realize that you're a very special person with important energy in this lifetime. And this energy can't be wasted by making unnecessary bonds and partnerships with people who aren't worth your time and energy. Saturn is trying to help you realize your worth and the importance of your energy, and how you shouldn't just let any old body inside your energy force field, and to be discerning, not cut everybody off and just be cold, because if you haven't mastered your Saturn, that's what you will do. You'll be guarded. You'll cut people off. Saturn is trying to teach you to not cut people off and be guarded, but just be discerning and kind of just be aware of who you're interacting with, you know, who you're making partnerships with. So your energy isn't being drained, because, as I was saying, you have very special energy, and that energy needs to be protected. You know, Saturn is not going to allow anybody to just come in and be around you. Sounds like I'm saying like you're some sort of like superstar kind of, and that's how I think about it. Like, Saturn is basically like your bodyguard and you're like the celebrity, basically. And Saturn is just like, nah, you can't come too close to this person, they're a very special person. And I think that's how people should view their Saturn in the first house. And I'm not saying be vain, but look at yourself as such. You're an important person. You're special. You're valuable. Despite what people may say about you, because people are going to judge you with this placement. People are going to judge you hard. But just know, regardless of how you are, people are going to have something to say about you. And it's just their opinion. It's not fact. What matters is knowing yourself, having a solid sense of self, not letting people's opinions and views and judgments alter who you are, your identity. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience having Saturn in the first house. I did talk about it a little bit when I described my ascendant with my Saturn in Pisces, but I just kind of want to basically share with you guys, how I feel having Saturn in the first house. And I will say it does suck as a placement, but like I said, if you look at it from a positive perspective, and that's just me having a Sagittarius moon, I'm always going to be positive regardless. So that really helps me in my Saturn in the first house struggle. But I mean, if you don't have like a lot of positive placements or placements that help give you like a positive outlook on things, and not only that, I'm a ninth house person, so I'm definitely going to always be optimistic even through trials and tribulations, but that's just me. But if you're a person that you don't have like a lot of ninth house placements or a lot of like fire energy, which I don't have a lot of fire energy in my chart, but like I said, with my Sag moon, that's just how I operate emotionally. I'm always going to be in high spirits all the time. My earlier years as a child, like I would just always feel really repressed and just really just restricted and just really angry, you know what I'm saying? Just angry that I feel like, or I felt like I couldn't be myself, and just be okay, and other people just being okay with me just being myself. You look around at other kids that may not have Saturn in the first house, and you just see that they could just freely be themselves, even if they're not doing the right thing, they still just get away with stuff. And with Saturn in the first house, you often feel like you can't get away with things, and you feel like somebody's always after you or just on you about something. Even if it's like the smallest thing, you could breathe a certain way and somebody's just on your neck about something. It's definitely like a very overbearing energy where you feel very repressed and you just feel like you can't just be fluid in who you are, and you're very cautious about, doing certain things that you may want to do. Like, I'm an Aquarius rising, as a kid, I would always just want to be super rebellious and just, doing Aquarius-like things, just weird, I mean, I still was a strange kid, and I would still do those rebellious things, but I would always get judged for it. Either somebody would make fun of me or I would get in trouble for stuff. It would just suck, so that develops a person who's just restricted and, they just feel very like kind of like stiff with themselves. It's just the energy that plays out with Saturn in the first house. And when you just look at it that way, as Saturn is just merely an energy and it's not something that is out of your control, because it totally is in your control. It's all in your head. Like I said, or I haven't said this, but I'm going to say this now, but astrology basically is like a energetic print of your psychology. It's all in your head, and essentially you've manifested people, places, and things that make you restricted because that's how your mind just operates. You're restricting yourself, and that's something that you have to realize. You have to understand why you put these limitations on yourself, because essentially you manifested this life for yourself, so you chose to be in this energy, so now you have to choose to get out of it. I just feel, or I felt, because I don't feel that way anymore, I feel more free, especially because I'm getting closer to 30. So, I'm chilling now. Like, nobody could stop me now. But as a kid, like, I felt like that. Like, as a kid, a teenager, preteen, I felt just super awkward, just really shy. Like I was saying in my Mercury Square Mars video, I think I said it, I don't remember, but in school, like I would be super shy. I wouldn't want to answer any questions. I wouldn't really want to have all eyes on me in the class. It's just an energy that just makes you feel very uncomfortable with yourself, but it's to get comfortable with yourself and who you are. Embrace who you are and be courageous about showing yourself off and presenting yourself. I mean, it's the first house. You're going to be seen regardless, so you might as well be proud in it, right? Saturn in the first house, it could be tough, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who have Saturn in the first house, they could relate to how I felt. And hopefully you guys are working through your Saturn lessons, and you guys are feeling a little bit more lighter as time goes on, and as you get older you start to feel a little bit more free in your self-expression. Something else I want to mention with Saturn in the first house, I feel like with this placement, like you age backwards. Because when you think about it, your childhood was taken away from you, essentially. You had to grow up early, you had to mature very fast. Saturn in the first house, over time, it's like you get your childhood back later on in life. And that's like your reward for working through your Saturn placement. You get your childhood back at an adult age, which, I mean, I don't see nothing wrong with that, because I feel like that's like a blessing, because when you think of adult life, it's pretty miserable. You got bills, you got all these stresses, but when you got Saturn in the first house as an adult, you're living, like you're chilling. There are some people who don't have Saturn in the first house and their life is still super lit. But when you think about adult life, it's not fun. You had all your fun in your childhood years, your preteens, your teenage years, maybe your 20s. When you get to be grown, it's like things are more serious. And it's not like that for a Saturn in the first house person. You deal with all that serious heaviness earlier in life. And then later in life, you get to have more fun, And I think that's a beautiful reward that people with Saturn in the first house should look forward to. Depending on how your Saturn is aspected in your first house, that could really determine how bad your Saturn in the first house lessons can be for you. Patience is key, and you're going to get your reward. So real quick, I'm just going to give some advice on how to deal with this placement if you're still super young, or you're just getting into astrology and you're just trying to understand everything. So if you have Saturn in the first house, my advice to you is, again, have patience, and just do what you need to do to try to understand yourself and not be so hard on yourself, because the lessons are going to be tough, and it's going to bring you back down to reality about who you are as a person, and to understand yourself inside and out. Try not to be so serious. Trust me, I used to hear that a lot growing up, that I'm like super serious and like I wouldn't smile that much. And I'm not gonna lie, like probably if I wasn't like smiling on any other day, somebody would say it, because that's just, like I said, I still have Saturn in the first house. Like people are still gonna talk about it, but I just feel like when you're more aware of it and you've mastered it, you hear that less. So try not to be so serious, and just know like this is part of the journey and it's not gonna last forever. Work on being super genuine in how you present yourself. Don't wear like this mask or play pretend, because Saturn in the first house, people tend to do that. Not saying that Saturn in the first house people are fake, but they try to put on this persona so people could like them and people won't judge them so harshly, so they could essentially hide, because it's like we're getting attacked in many different angles. It's like I just want to hide, You know, so you hide behind like a certain persona that's not you. And Saturn in the first house is definitely going to punish you even more because you're not being your true authentic self. The point is, like, regardless of what people say, you still need to be you. You still need to be proud of yourself. You still need to be confident in yourself. Embrace the negative feedback from people and use their negativity to glow up. Because essentially, these people who are throwing negativity at you, they're giving away their energetic currency to you for free. So use it to glow up your energetic currency. And think about it this way: you have Saturn in the first house in this life. Now you know what not to manifest for your next life. Think about it that way. Once you mastered this energy, you've experienced it, because that's all your spirit wanted to do, was experience what it's like to have Saturn in the first house and whatever other placements that you have in your chart. But that doesn't mean you have to reincarnate into a new life next time with the same kind of energy. Now you know what it's like to have Saturn in the first house. Now you can manifest a better energy for yourself in the next life. Just remember to smile. And I know Saturn in the first house people hate hearing that, but don't do it for other people. Do it for yourself and genuinely smile and be happy for yourself, because then that energy radiates outwards, and then you attract the right people who will be supportive of who you are and really assist in healing your identity issues. It'll make things easier dealing with this placement. But that is all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, let me know. You could send me an email, or you could leave your comments down below. And you could also follow me on Instagram. I'm going to leave my email and my Instagram in the description box. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.